Hi all, I'm Vishwanath. In last video, we have created a Spring Boot REST API and integrated that with Lombok, HATEOAS, H2, JPA for processing user information. And in this, we will see how we can use Swagger, Hall, Actuators, validations, and exceptions. In order to start with it, uh, the Swaggers, we get the information, most of the information from Spring Doc website. So, and in the Spring Doc website, we can see the dependencies for it. In order to add the Swagger dependencies, we navigate to our project and inside the pom.xml, we'll be adding Swagger dependency. Please note that we have already added the rest of the dependencies, which are like actuators, validation, hall. Uh, s- so let's go to the dependency and add the dependency and save it. Go to the project and you see uh, that we have added now new dependency called Open API and the version is 1.6.12. As soon as we have added that, you can see that the console of this application, although we have added uh, the Spring starters jar, always it is best practice to restart the application when you do any XML changes. So I'm stopping the application and I'm going to start run as Spring Boot application and I'm launching it. So localhost application is running at port 8080. You can see the because we have added the Hall browser, you can see that Hall browser as soon as we have keyed 8080 port, the Explorer which is pointing to index.html has activated the Hall browser and you can see all the methods, get method, post method, put method, delete method, etc. Uh, and you can also see because we have added the actuators and in order to see the actuators, you can just say as slash actuators. I think so. In order to see the actuators, you can just mention as actuator, not actuators. So and if you want to check the health of the application, you can take the second URL, which is actuator health, and you can see the application is up. Uh, there are various endpoints that we can customize in application.xml for actuators in order to enable it. Let's add that by adding going to the application.properties and let's add the management properties, management endpoints, which will be typically like a web endpoint, and we are trying to say like it should include all the uh, points by mentioning as a star. So You can see the application has restarted. So if because we have now activated all the endpoints, if we see actuators, you see a lot set of links has been shown, which can talk about the health, which can also talk about the thread terms, metrics, or mapping, which is production ready future. So, uh, that's all on actuators. And now let's see on because we have also integrated the Swagger from the Open API. Uh, as soon as we reach over here, we can see that Swagger path, the default Swagger path is available at that location, localhost dot colon 8080 slash Swagger UI. As soon as I mention this Swagger UI, uh, because the application what we have created is a user control. Now you see the documentation is automatically generated, like what is this is required and what is the structure and how it is going to define, like the string value, date of birth, how it is going to be, whether a string value or not. All the details of documentation are auto-generated by using the Swagger UI. Using the Swagger UI is very simple. It is all we have added in the pom.xml, the dependencies to the pom.xml, same as actuators and same as a Hall browser. Now we will see how we can add validations and exceptions to the application. So let's go to the controller. So inside the controller, in order to uh, 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 create the validation, we can go to the entity class and we can mention that uh, this name is going to be a mandatory one, where we can say as not blank. And you can see this validations are coming from, not blank validations are coming from Java X validation uh, message and not blank. And we can also mention that this requires minimum size uh, with an annotation as a size, where it can takes like a maximum and minimum. Minimum we are expecting it to be at least to have 3 characters, and maximum uh, m- max it can hold up to, let us say, like 50 characters. So and if we want a default message to be displayed saying like you know name is required with at least 3 characters. So this is the message that we are going to show to the end user. And for email, uh, in order to say like it's a proper email or not, we have a validation called as at rate of email, that will verify whether it is a valid email or not. And address, we because it is a string type, we can again say like it is not blank if we are expecting that it should be present. Um, and local date of birth, and we are saying that we are also expecting this field, and we are saying like it can be not blank. The difference between not blank and not null is not null and not empty. So if you are saying like not null, that means it can be an empty. If you are saying like it is not empty, which is deprecated, and currently we have this method as a not blank, which will also take the null check into the consideration. So it is relatively, I find, easier as a not blank as a superset of not null. So we we can go with this validation, and uh, we can say like a date of birth cannot be a future value. So we can say we do have an annotations as a past or present. That means we are entering it in uh, uh, not a future value. So this will validate. This will help us to make the application user not to enter any values in future. And in order to activate the validation, we have to go to the controller, and we have to call valid annotation, so that the validation is being acted on when we are creating a user, and we want a similar validation to be implemented when we are trying to modify the data. So over here as well, I'm trying to add that validation as modified data. So now we can go to the postman, and we can see how we can use those details. So I have just opened the postman, and because it's an in-memory database, every time when the application has started, you see there will be no data. So let's populate the data quickly. So inside this method, now you can see the validation has started kicking, where you can see like unexpected validation error, and it is saying like the values are not right. So it just says that ideally for date field, we should not use not blank one. So let's go back to the code. So inside the code, if we go back to the user class, we should not have a not blank validation for this field. And as soon as we have done the modification, the application has restarted because of the starter plugin or the dependencies that we had. Now again, we'll create a send user. Now this time you can see that the user is being created successfully. Let's create a couple of users. First, uh, three, I can say as four. So if I say as a get method, now you can see like a couple of users are created. Three is for three and four is for four. Uh, yeah. So, in terms of validation, as I said, like if we are trying to miss this address, and then again we are going to say like a post method and going to say it. Now we'll get a validation field object, where we are getting like a method validation not found. If you We can also customize this particular method, where we can say like instead of displaying the entire data, we can customize the validation, and we can say like user address is not found. Let's see how we can do it. So let's go to the rat, and because we are trying to add a validation for method argument uh, one, what we can say as new class, and you can say um uh, user app exception handler. The name of the class can be anything. I'm just trying to create an exception handler, but definitely it requires an annotation because it is going to be a REST controller. We are interested to catch uh, to implement it for all the controllers. Uh, and in the postman, if you closely look to the results, we got the request as a bad results, which is a bad request, which is a response status. So let's go back, and let's say as a response status, and we got that as a bad request. HTTP status dot bad bad request. So whenever there is a bad request, we are expecting a method to be invoked. So the method must be a public method. And we want to return the uh, uh, the error code in terms of a JSON object, which will be both string and string as a map value in order to handle this is to handle like method argument not valid exception. So the for this class, this is an object. So now what we would be doing is because we are expecting it as a map will take like a key value pair, uh, and so we'll create one more map, final. uh, I'm going to say as an error details, that is going to be my new hash map. Uh, my Let me import util and hash map as well. And now what I'm going to say is uh, whatever my exception is there, I'm going to get the binding results out of it. And for that, I have a method get field value, uh, get get field errors, not the value. I have a list of all the errors, and for each error, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to loop through each error, and I'm going to place the value inside my newly created map, which is an error details that as a key value pair. So the each value of error, I'm going to put that as uh, error dot get field and error dot get default message. So so and finally I'm going to return this. Now if I go back to my postman, and if I again create it, now now, let me stop it and start the application once again, and let me move this to uh, a package called exception handling exceptions. Move this to exceptions. Mm. So now let's start my application. Use wrap. Application is yet to be up. Application is yet to be up. So when the application is not up, the error generally that we get inside the Postman client will be could not find the request. Once the application is ready, and again now you can see that we are still getting this. The actual reason behind that is inside our class we have not mentioned the spring to handle the exception. In order to handle the exception, we have to use the exception handler annotation, and then we have to mention like what is the class that we are interested to handle the annotation. Over here, the class that we are interested to handle is this class. As soon as we mention this to the Springs, where you have seen that the application restart is already taking place. So now if we go back to the Postman and then if we hit this, you see now we have handled the error in a JSON format. And if I send it again, where you can see like address, it has started validating address first, and address is not blank. And if I send it again, assuming that I create address and I don't enter, I probably if I just say as uh, for validating, you can just see like email is not right, and assuming that now we see both validations for address and email. It has come as a key value pair in a neat and proper manner. And likewise, if I say my date of birth to be a future value, again it says that my date of birth cannot be a future value. That's all for now. And just to recap, in this, what we have seen is how to use a Swagger for documentation, browser, and actuators for health validations uh, and exception handling to handle the exception or the request properly. Thank you.